أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه العبد المؤيد والرسول المسدد حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وصحابته المنتجبين. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله، صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله. يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة ويا عبرة كل مؤمن ومؤمنة يا مظلوم يا غريم يا شهيد كربلاء، يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الذين آمنوا وتطمئن قلوبهم بذكر الله، ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. A second for the love of Fatima al-Zahra. A third for the love of Imam Hussein with your loudest voices. One of the most widespread illnesses today is the illness of depression. In fact, a great percentage of people will either have depression now or will be diagnosed with depression over a certain period of their lifetime. One of the most worrisome illnesses today is depression. The most on-demand medications today are antidepressants. They're the most on-demand in most countries, but specifically here in the West. Ask pharmaceutical companies, enter any pharmacy, and you will see that the most on-demand medications are antidepressants. Depression is of two kinds. One kind of depression is temporary. It only lasts for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and its reasons are known. Maybe a death in the family, an accident, the death of a national figure, a breakup in a relationship, the cause is usually known. This kind of depression is temporary, usually called the blues. It doesn't require much medication, it only requires time. And as they say, time heals all wounds. The second type of depression is what is considered chronic depression. This depression does not go away easily. It doesn't take weeks or months. Sometimes it takes up to years. Sometimes it goes and it comes back. It might go again and then it's triggered. It comes back. This is a dangerous kind of depression that doesn't go away easily. This kind of depression, they don't know what causes it. Scientists, physicians, psychiatrists, psychologists, till today, they don't know exactly what causes chronic depression. Someone can have a normal life without tragedies, without any death in the family, living a normal life, yet that person suffers from depression and might even consider committing suicide. Now, there are symptoms of depression. There are some signs. If you have these signs, you might have depression. One, lack of sleep. One of the symptoms of chronic depression is lack of sleep, not being able to sleep. Or sleeping too much. Either being an insomniac, not being able to sleep, or sleeping too much is a sign of depression. Another sign is lack of eating, loss of appetite, or eating too much is also a sign of depression. Feeling tired, feeling fatigue, or having lack of energy is a sign of depression. Loss of interest in daily activities, not wanting to go to work, not wanting to exercise, not wanting to socialize, being antisocial is one of the signs of depression. If you have depression, these are some of the symptoms. Thoughts of suicide. Repeatedly having thoughts of wanting to take your life is one of the symptoms of depression. According to statistics and studies, women are more prone to depression than men by 2 or 3 times. Women are 2 or 3 times more likely to have depression and more likely to attempt suicide. However, men, according to these studies and statistics, men are 3 or 4 times more likely to actually commit suicide. Women might attempt, but that attempt might not be successful, while men, by 3 or 4 times more, are likely to actually commit suicide. According to these studies, that when committing suicide, females usually use more peaceful ways of taking their lives, such as taking or overdosing on sleeping pills, while men would prefer more violent means of suicide, such as jumping off a bridge. Here in the United States of America, not here in Canada, in the United States of America, on average, there are 35,000 cases of suicide every year. 35,000 people every year decide to take away the life that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them. Now, depression is a common illness in the West and in Western societies, and it's not too far from our own communities. Even though this is a taboo topic that we prefer not to discuss and talk about, but depression exists. Even in our communities, many of our youth, young men and women, even some adults, even some elderly, they suffer from depression. They have depression. Some of them think of committing suicide. Some of them have already committed suicide. There are some prominent communities here in North America, from the Islamic communities, that are having high rates of suicide. Every once in a while there's a suicide in that community. This is a problem that needs to be addressed. Tonight, my dear brothers and sisters, we would like to address the following two. Number one, we'd like to discuss the reasons behind depression. Why do people develop depression? Scientists and researchers tell us that the reasons behind depression are unknown. We don't know why people have chronic depression and why they decide to commit suicide. However, tonight we will make an attempt into analyzing the reasons why people develop chronic depression. And our hypothesis, let's see if we're successful or not. Our hypothesis is that Western lifestyle causes depression. In some cases, the way we live in the West, Western lifestyle, causes some people to have depression. Let's see, are we correct? Are we not correct? Our answers might not be conclusive, but they might encourage others for further study. So this is one. We would like to see what are the reasons, even though they tell us that we don't know the reasons. But that's impossible. Because for every effect, there's a cause. For every effect, there's a cause. Depression does not come out of nowhere. People are not born with depression. It is caused by your surroundings, by your lifestyle. We shall try to study. Two, what solutions does Islam offer those that have depression or might have depression? What does the Quran say? Or narrations of Ahlul Bayt? We will try to find solutions. One kind of solution comes before being diagnosed with depression. Islam offers us some solutions before being diagnosed. Prevention. As they say, prevention is better than the cure. Islam offers us ways of preventing ourselves from being diagnosed with depression. And two, there are ways of overcoming depression after being diagnosed. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Tonight we'd like to concentrate on depression in the West, because here is where most people that are diagnosed with depression live, here in the West. We would not like to talk about the depression that exists in the East, in the Middle East, because depression there has many causes and many reasons. Terrorism, bombings, killings, kidnappings. ISIS alone is an enough cause and reason for depression for most people in the Middle East. These are some scars that are very difficult to heal. And perhaps those that develop depression because of these reasons, such as terrorism, kidnapping, killing, and bombings, perhaps these scars will not go away, or they will take a lifetime. No, we would like to concentrate on the reasons of depression here in the West. Those that have a perfect lifestyle, those that don't deal with terrorism, or bombings, or kidnappings, yet their level of depression is the most highest, is higher than anywhere else in the world. Do you really blame a person living in Yemen to have depression? Of course not. Do you blame people in Syria, in Aleppo, in Iraq, in Mosul, or in Fallujah of having depression? You don't blame them. If they don't have depression, you might ask questions, why aren't they depressed? But the question is, those that live in the West, those that have freedom and democracy, and the right to work, and the right to seek education, and they have so many benefits, yet depression is skyrocketing. This is the reasons. This is what we'd like to study and try to reach conclusions. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Our hypothesis is that Western lifestyle might cause depression if it goes overboard in some cases. Now, I don't mean to say that anyone that lives in Canada or America or Europe will definitely pick up depression. No. However, there are some causes, there are some things, part of Western lifestyle that cause depression. Number one, workaholism and materialism. You see people here, they go to work from 8 to 8, or from 8 to 5, or from 8 to 6. They get up early in the morning, at 6 in the morning. They come back home at 8 in the evening. It's all about work. It's all about making money. Some people work 5 days a week. Others work 6 days a week. They only have 1 day off. As for vacations, some people only get 2-week vacations. If they're lucky, they get 3 weeks. Not more than that. It's all about work. It's all about a routine of working, accomplishing, competing with others, and making money. Now, this lifestyle of workaholism, your life is about working, your life is about making money. Well, when do you have time for family? When do you have time for your children? When do you have time for your hobbies? Do you get a chance to go fishing, or to go exercise, or to go out with your family members? A lot of people, they don't. Because their life is their work, or their work is their life. All they concentrate is on working. No time to socialize, no time to meet with members of your community, no time to go to church, or to go to the mosque, or to go to the synagogue, or to go to the temple. No time to read. Now, this has side effects. This will develop into something severe. And on top of that, in addition to workaholism, there's materialism. There's the worry about having nice cars, nice homes, nice clothing, have the latest iPhone, have the latest clothing. What's the trend, the latest trend? You have to follow up with the trend. You can't be outdated. Your friends can't be keeping up with the latest trends, and you're not. We live in a society that's very materialistic. Whether it's the commercials that we see on TV, or our neighbors, our co-workers, our classmates at school, we have to keep up with the trends, with the latest trends. We have to keep up with the latest fashion and hairstyles and cars and iPhones and smartphones and gadgets. What happens is, the side effects of this is that we concentrate so much on our bodies, what we eat, what we dress, what we wear, the car that we sit in, the house that we live in, the phone that we use. We worry so much about materialism that we neglect our nafs, our soul. We feed our bodies and we nourish it, yet we keep this nafs starving. You can't feed one and keep the other starving. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us bodies and spirits, and both require nourishment. Both require taking care of. You can't take care of your bodies and neglect the nafs. The nafs requires nourishment. The nafs wants prayers. It wants to hear dua. It wants to hear a lecture. It wants to hear words of admonishment. When you neglect the nafs, you get into trouble. So after 20 years of workaholism and materialism, after 20 years of working 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, without taking vacations, without fulfilling your desires of doing your hobbies, socializing, spending time with your family members, without going to the mosque. You know, there's some people, you only see them 13 days out of the year. 10 nights in Muharram and 3 nights in Ramadan of Layali al-Qadr. And that's it. And then they disappear. You don't see them any longer. When you ask them why, where are you? Where are you spending your days? They say, Sayyid, I'm busy with work. I'm busy with work. They only dedicate 13 days of the year for religion, for the mosque, for the Husseiniya, and 300 and I don't know how many days for work, for materialism, all about money, all about making business. And then after 20 years, when they develop depression, they ask, why? Why do I have depression? What's wrong with me? Why is it that I can't sleep? Why is it that I can't stop crying? Why is it that I get evil thoughts? Why? Because you've neglected, once you've neglected your nafs, and all you cared about was money and owning your business, all you cared about was fashion, all you cared about was your phone and your clothing and the latest trends. When you neglected this nafs, now you ask, what is wrong with me? Why do I have depression? Well, ask yourself what went wrong. It's materialism and workaholism that is part of Western culture and Western civilization that can cause depression in a lot of people. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. This is one of the causes, in my opinion. One of the causes. Another cause is that you see a lot of people in Western society, they delay marriage. They don't rush into marriage. That's good. Not rushing into marriage is a good thing, because marriage is an important process. It's a big step in your life. You're choosing a life partner that you will live with for the rest of your life. For richer, for poorer, till death do us part. Not rushing into marriage is a good thing. However, when you delay marriage, when you enter in your 20s, when you reach your late 20s, when you enter in your 30s, and you still have not thought about marriage, that's a problem. Because once you've entered in your 30s, mid-30s, well, the train's going to pass you by. You're going to miss the train. What happens is you're delaying the process of marriage and you're reducing your options. People don't grow younger. They grow older. When you grow older, when you pass by opportunities, you're reducing your options for marriage. You see, my dear friends, marriage is not just about finding a husband who can support you financially so that you don't need to go to work any longer. Marriage is not about finding a wife that will cook for you and clean so that you don't have to worry about these things. No, these are good benefits of marriage. To find someone to support you, to find someone that will cook and clean. But that is not the philosophy behind marriage. That is not the essential beauty behind marriage. The essential beauty behind marriage is companionship, is having a companion, is coming back home to a companion who you could speak to, you could talk to about life's problems, about the difficulties of work, about your annoying boss, or your demanding job, or your financial burdens. That's the beauty of marriage, of having a companion, someone to speak to, someone to relate to, someone who you can get things off your chest with. That's the beauty of companionship. And a lot of people who delay marriage, they're delaying themselves, or they're forbidding themselves of that beautiful companionship. This companionship, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of you off your shoulders. It makes you feel good. It's good to know that you come back home to a person that understands you. Someone that you can speak to. Someone that makes all the burdens of life seem very easy. That's the beauty of marriage. That's companionship. A couple of weeks ago, I was reading on CNN about a couple who were married for 60 years. The husband died. After 20 minutes, his wife died as well. And now they didn't die in a car accident or in a plane crash. No. They lived in the same house. The husband died. After 20 minutes, the wife died as well. This is companionship. This shows you that these people were inseparable. Inseparable. They couldn't live without each other. This is companionship. This is what the Quran says. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created men and women for them to search for comfort in one another. To have comfort in one another. A man comforts his wife. A wife comforts her husband. As in the words of Imam Ali alayhi salam, he would say regarding Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam, he would say, when I would enter the house with all the pain and agony on my shoulders, but as soon as I would see the face of Fatima al-Zahra, I would forget all of my pain. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Today, unfortunately, our marriages are completely the opposite. When a husband comes back from work, when he looks at his wife, he remembers all of his pain and all of his troubles and all of his agonies. Unfortunately, our marriages, we've made them in a sort of way. Now those that delay marriage and pass up opportunities and say, I'm still young. What's the need to rush? The need to rush? We're not telling you to rush. But when you keep on delaying, you're passing up the chance on companionship. This is one. Two, you're passing up the opportunity of becoming a parent, a mother and a father. Do you know how beautiful it is to have children? To be the father of young boys and young girls? Something so beautiful. A lot of people, when you delay marriage, you're delaying the process of being parents. The Quran says regarding children, Al-Malu wal-Banun Zinatul Hayatil Dunya. Children are the ornaments of this life. They are beautiful to have. They bring you joy and happiness that no money can bring you. Nothing else can bring you. Like the way your children can bring you. When you become mothers and fathers, you will understand how beautiful it is. You will see that your life will start revolving not around yourself, but around your children. You will do things that not what makes you happy, but what makes your children happy. You will go on vacations to places not that you desire, but places that your children desire, and that will make you happy. When you see your children happy, you will be happy. Children are a bundle of joy. They will give you something to do. They will take away all of the world's pain and agony and troubles. It will make you forget everything. They will give you a new perspective on life. When you're delaying marriage, you're delaying your chance of having that joy and beauty and happiness in your house. Here in the West, you see a lot of youth. They move swiftly in their 20s. They get into their 30s. They still have not thought about marriage. They still have not considered marriage. They still don't have children. They live in an empty apartment without a spouse, without a companion, without children. They're all alone. They come back from work, no one to greet them, no one to speak to them, and then they wonder, why am I depressed? Why am I suffering from depression? Of course you'll suffer from depression. When you don't have a companion, and you're growing older, and you don't have children, of course you will develop depression. Another problem here in the West is that they try to substitute their families and their children. They substitute for their children and their families what? Pets. We live in a culture, we live in a civilization that has the culture of pets, which substitutes for children. You know, I see a lot of people, their life goals to have a family, their goal is to have 3 children and 2 dogs. As if it comes with it. 3 children and 2 dogs. As if dogs are just like children. They have dogs, cats, birds, snakes, lizards, fish, whatever you can think of. They substitute children for pets. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not against pets. I'm not against animals, except snakes. Get those things away from me. Otherwise, there's nothing wrong with having pets, but there's something wrong with substituting children for pets. That is a mistake. Children are something that Allah gives you. Children bring you joy. Children bring you happiness. Even if you have 100 pets, they will not substitute for 1 child. For 1 child. Never. Here, they think that they can substitute the happiness that they gain from children with pets. You see people with a dog, 2 dogs, 3 dogs, and they're happy with their animals. They're happy with their pets. But 20 years down the line, when they don't have children, or when they only have 1 child, and they have depression, they wonder, why do I have depression? And that's another thing. Here in the West, they're sufficient with 2 or 3 children. While Islam says, have children. Bear children. Have 4, 5, 6. Have children. Children will bring you joy. Of course, with conditions. With the condition of being financially capable, of being able to raise these children. 1. Number 2, of also being able to spiritually raise these children. Of course, these conditions need to be taken into consideration. Islam encourages to have children. The more the merrier, not just 1 or 2. These are some things that bring us joy and happiness in our lives. But in the West, this doesn't exist. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. These are some of the causes, in my opinion. Another causes that I think is one of the major reasons behind depression here in the West is weak family ties. Weak family ties. You see the families with children, those that decide to have children instead of having pets, their children, as soon as they become 18, they leave the house. They leave. For a teenager that passes 18 to stay in the house, this is considered a taboo. This is silly to stay in the house. You have to leave. You have to go on to college or university. And what happens is that these teenagers at the age of 18 or 19, they're still in need of parental guidance. They still need their parents to look over them, to watch out after them, to take care of them, yet they leave the house. They leave the house, they go on to college, they go on to dormitories, or they rent apartments with friends. And what happens is the parents, they lose the beauty of having their children stay at home. It's beautiful to have your teenagers stay at home. They lose that beauty. And then, once they leave the house, you think that they're going to come back every weekend? These teenagers, once they go off to college, once they have freedom, once they're experimenting. Now, what they're experimenting with, God knows. Is it with relationships? Is it with drugs? Is it with alcohol? Is it with going to clubs and bars? God knows. Now that they have freedom and they're experimenting, you expect them to come back home to their boring parents' house? Of course that's not going to happen. That's why you see that these children, once they leave the house, they don't come back. If they visit once a year. or twice a year, on Thanksgiving and on Christmas, if the parents are lucky. If the parents are lucky, their children will visit them on Christmas and during Thanksgiving. So there's no gatherings, there's no calls, there's no visits. That is why here in the West they had to think of something called Mother's Day and Father's Day. Why? Because mothers are so neglected throughout the year that they decided to have one day out of the year for mothers. Isn't that a shame? And that's not the real reason. That's not the real reason to have Mother's Day or Father's Day. The real reason is economic. So that people will go out and buy gifts and presents for their mothers and fathers. It's an economic reason. To get the economy moving. Not because they feel sad for their mothers and fathers. So what happens is, this poor mother that works so hard on her child, once the child is 18, they leave the house and they don't ask about their parents. And the same thing goes for their father. After a while, this takes a toll on them. The mother develops depression. The father develops depression. When they don't receive calls, when there's no meetings, when there's no visits, when no one asks about them, they develop depression and they ask why. Why do I have to take antidepressants? Why am I so depressed? Why? And same thing goes for the children as well. The teens, they think that this is good for them. They have freedom, they like to experiment, they could do whatever they want, but after a couple of years, they discover what they were missing out on. They were missing out on parental guidance, parental love, parental emotions. Now, the families in the West, they're not any different. Unfortunately, many of us, we came here to the West and we picked up the same exact values, the same exact habits. You see that here, Muslims in the West, our teenagers as well, as soon as they become 18, they move on. They move out of the house. Now, I'm not saying that this is haram. I'm not saying that this is haram or this is bad. But these are some reasons that cause depression. Even our communities, as soon as they become 18 or 19, they move off to college, to universities, and they barely visit. They barely come back home. There's barely any family gatherings. And even if those teenagers decide to stay, look at our lifestyles in the West. There's a family. Everyone's at home. Yeah, we don't see each other. The husband goes to work early in the morning. He doesn't see his family. The wife also works. She leaves the house. The children go to school. They come back home at different times. They don't eat together. They don't have breakfast together. They don't have lunch together. They don't have dinner together. They all live in that same house, but it's as if they're strangers. They don't even meet. And once they come back home in the evening, the children go into their room to study. While they're on social media or on their iPads or whatever, with the excuse, the parents think that they're studying in their room. But half of them are not even studying. This is how our gatherings, this is how our families are. We barely meet, we barely gather. Even the ones that live in the same house. Even on Sundays. Sundays that are designated for the family. For some families, several Sundays pass by and they don't meet, they don't gather. And even when we gather, have you seen our gatherings? Have you seen when families gather in the West? Everyone's on their phone. The son is texting on WhatsApp. The girl is on Twitter. The father is reading the news. The mother is speaking with her mother on Viber in Baghdad. And so on. Everyone's busy with their phone. And this is a family gathering. This is on a Sunday in which they're supposed to sit and talk about family issues, family problems, domestic issues. Everyone's busy on their phone. Isn't this a problem? Look at family photos 10 years ago. They used to be funner. There were no iPhones, there were no smartphones. Everyone would be involved in discussions. We would laugh, we would joke, we would talk. Everyone was happy. Everyone had something to say. Today, we've become like robots. Everyone's on their phone. We barely even talk. Except the poor grandmother, she's sitting around. Everyone else is on their phone except her. And then we worry, and then we complain. Why are we depressed? Why do we feel depression? And even the children, at the age of 4, 5, 6, mashallah, everyone has iPads nowadays. Steve Jobs must be very happy because he has a device, at least 10 devices in each house. Children, even our children, they go to school, come back on their iPads, sitting at home, even during lectures, they're always on their iPads. And who's guilty? We are the parents. We are. For allowing them. I know some parents, in order to just get rid of their naughty kids, because the kids drive them crazy, so they give them the iPad, just to calm them down. We're guilty of this. And then we worry, why are we feeling depressed? Why is my child not studying? Or doing bad at school? Or why is my child getting himself into a mess with strangers or on social media? Well, we're the reason. We're the cause. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Another one of the causes of depression, I think, overall, I'm not just speaking, hopefully this doesn't have to do with our communities, but overall in the West, one of the major causes of depression is alcohol and drugs. Alcohol is part of Western culture. A lot of people drink. A lot of people do drugs. And they do them for fun. It's for recreational, right? It's recreational alcohol and drugs. However, a lot of times that fun turns into sadness. Those who become addicts of drugs all of a sudden becomes a curse. And their drug addiction causes them to have depression. Or even alcohol. Those who drink and consume too much of alcohol, it causes depression. It's one of the major sources of depression today. Ironically, a lot of people drink here in the West to run away from depression, to run away from sadness. But they don't realize that they're only digging a deeper hole for themselves of depression. There are some studies and statistics say that those who are most suicidal are alcoholics. Many people that were found dead by suicide, they committed suicide. At the time of suicide, they were found, they had drank very heavily. They had drank very heavily. Thus, drinking is part of Western society. It's part of Western culture. Here, people become drinking from the age of 18. And they don't stop until they are forced to stop. Until it becomes a problem. Until they are caught drinking while driving. And they have to go into rehab. And they don't stop until it becomes a serious problem. Until it starts to damage their lives. Unfortunately, some youth here in the West, they went into the same path. I hope that this doesn't exist in this community. But in some other communities, it does exist. And it's one of the major problems of depression. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Now, my dear brothers and sisters, to talk about the problem is not enough. We have to discuss the solution. We know that depression exists. Not just in the West, but even in our own Muslim communities, it exists. You might know some people with depression. A family member, a relative, a friend, a spouse, a child. And if depression is not solved, if we don't solve our depression, or we don't try to cure it, it only becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. Some people think that if they ignore their depression, it will become better. It'll go away, like the common cold or the common flu. No, depression requires solutions. Some depression requires medical treatment, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The first step is acknowledging that you have this illness, my dear friends. You cannot seek a cure if you don't acknowledge that you have the symptom, that you have the illness. So first of all, acknowledge it. Realize that you have a problem. This is the first step in reaching a cure. The second step, in some cases you need medical attention, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with seeking medical attention. If you are diagnosed with depression, this does not make you mentally ill. Some people say, no, don't say that I'm depressed. Because they think depression means being crazy. No, it doesn't mean being crazy. There are some people that are very sane, very intelligent, very successful, yet they suffer from depression. It doesn't mean that you're insane. So acknowledge it. Does Islam have a cure for depression? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. There are a lot of cures. There are some cures that help prevent depression from occurring in the first place. And there are some cures that will help reduce depression or make it go away. Number one, the remembrance of Allah Azza wa Jal. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَتَطْمَئِنُّ قُلُوبُهُمْ بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبِ. The remembrance of Allah puts hearts at ease. For the believers, those who connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those who remember Him, their hearts become at ease. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, at the time of salah, he would tell Bilal to say the adhan. Instead of telling him to say the adhan, he would say, Arahna ya Bilal. Bring us comfort, ya Bilal. Because the sound of the adhan is the remembrance of Allah. Salah is the remembrance of Allah. It brings us comfort to our hearts. No matter how depressed you are, no matter how stressed you are, no matter how sad you are, if you learn to fall in love with the remembrance of Allah, if you learn to fall in love with salah, with dua, with Quran, it will put you at ease. But you have to fall in love with it. You have to get accustomed to it. Remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we say remembrance of Allah, it's not just physical. It's not just by the tongue, but by the heart as well. When you remember Allah with your tongue, have your heart remember Him as well. Have Allah into your heart. Know that Allah is always watching you. Allah is always taking care of you. No matter what case you're in which state you're in, no matter how depressed you are, how lonely you are, if everyone has abandoned you, the entire world has abandoned you, a spouse, if you broke up in a relationship, if you lost a job, if you're away from your family members, know that there's one that will never leave you, and that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam Hussein alayhi salam in Dua Arafah says, ماذا فقد من وجدك وماذا وجد من فقدك. He who has you, what does he have to lose? And he who lost you, what has he gained? If you have everything in life, but if you don't have Allah, what is it that you really have? And if you have Allah, but you don't have anything else, what have you lost? Absolutely nothing. Know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always with you. Know that this life is not the end, and it's only a means to another life. When we know this, when we acknowledge this, when we realize this, our depression goes away. When we realize that this life will not last forever. It's only temporary. Ahadith tell us that remembering death is the cure for all illnesses. Remember death. Remember that death will come to us. For those that are sinners, for those that are in love with this life, remembering death will help them not sin and reduce their sins and repent to Allah. For those that are depressed, remembering death will ease their pain as well, because they will remember that their pain will go away eventually. It will not remain forever. Realizing that Allah is watching us and He's with us at all times, this brings comfort, my dear friends. The remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is the best of companions. Allah is the best of friends. If you have Allah, you don't need anyone else. In Dua Joshan al-Kabir we recite, Ya man ilayhi yahrabu al-khaifun, Ya man ilayhi yafza'u al-mudhnibun, Ya man ilayhi yaqsudu al-munibun, Ya man ilayhi yarghabu az-zahidun, Ya man ilayhi yalja'u al-mutahayyirun, Ya man bihi yasta'nisu al-muridun, Ya man bihi yaftakhiru al-muhibbun. Yunus alayhi salam, Prophet Yunus, when he fell into the ocean and he was swallowed by the whale. He was swallowed by the whale, and the whale was in the ocean, and it was in the middle of the night. Allah Azza wa Jal says that Yunus cried, and Yunus called us in the three darknesses, in the darknesses. وَذَنُّونِ إِذْ ذَهَبَ مُغَاضِبًا فَظَنَّ أَن لَن نَقْدِرَ عَلَيْهِ فَنَادَى فِي الظُّلُمَاتِ. Yunus cried in the darknesses, في الظلمات أن لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين فاستجبنا له ونجيناه من الغم وكذلك ننجي المؤمنين. Yunus was depressed. Yunus was in three major darknesses. The darkness of the whale, inside the stomach of the whale. The darkness of the ocean and the darkness of the night. Yet in the middle of all of these darknesses, Yunus spoke to Allah Azza wa Jal. فنادى في الظلمات أن لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. Allah heard him, even in the deepest of waters, even in the darkest of nights. Allah heard him and He answered him. And this is called al-dhikr al-yunisi. It is a cure for depression. Scholars say that this sentence, this phrase, this verse in the Quran cures all illnesses, all emotional illnesses. La ilaha illa ant subhanaka inni kuntu min al-zalimin. This is one of the cures for depression. Another cure that Islam offers, Islam says do good deeds. Do good deeds. Help out an orphan. Help out in a clinic. Help out a project. Spend your money in a good cause. You will feel good. When you do good, you will feel good. It's self-rewarding. No matter how sad you are, how empty you feel, when you do a good deed, when you support an orphan, when you support a charity, you will feel good. Islam says that have strong social ties. Go for Salatul Jama'ah. Visit other believers. Visit other mu'mineen. Let them visit you. Exchange gifts. This makes you happy. This makes you feel strong. This reduces depression. This reduces the pain that you might feel in your heart. Among the solution that Islam offers, Islam says travel. Travel. قُلْ سِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَامْشُوا فِي مَنَاكِبِهَا. Say, travel on earth. Travel. Get out of your daily routine. Get out of your house. Go and travel. See the world. And the pain will be reduced. Depression will be reduced. And among the best places to visit is the shrines of Ahlul Bayt. Go visit the shrine of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Medina, or the Imams in Al-Baqi', or come to Karbala and visit the shrine of Imam Hussein. Come to paradise on earth and see, will your depression go away or not? Go visit Imam al-Rida alayhi salam in Mashhad, or the Imams in Baghdad, or the Imams in Samarra. Go visit the Imams, the shrines of Ahlul Bayt. These shrines bring you peace and happiness and calmness. As those who've been to these places and these shrines, and you will see, once you go to these places, you don't want to go back. These places bring you comfort and happiness. There is no one that goes to the shrine of Imam Hussein and leaves depressed. No, you might feel depressed for Imam Hussein and for his sadness, but you will forget your own sadness. And among the best ways to overcome depression and sadness is to cry for Imam Hussein alayhi salam, to shed your tears for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Imam al-Rida alayhi salam tells his companion Ibn Shabib, he says, Ya Ibn Shabib, in kunta bakiyan ala shay'in fabki ala jaddi al-Husayn فإنه ذبح كما تذبح الشاة. Ya Ibn Shabib, if you were to cry for anyone or for anything, cry for my grandfather Imam Hussein alayhi salam, for he was slaughtered the same way they slaughter a sheep. Cry for Imam Hussein. Remember that his tragedy was the greatest of all tragedies. When you realize that the tragedy of Imam Hussein was the greatest, then all of our tragedies, all of our depression and sadness will seem nothing, will seem unimportant. Was there a tragedy greater than the tragedy of Imam Hussein alayhi salam? The poet says, أنست رزيتكم رزايانا التي سلفت وهونت الرزايا الآتية وفجائع الأيام تبقى مدة وتزول وهي إلى القيامة باقية باقية باقية. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, no one like him, the only grandson on the face of this planet, with the greatest of all people. On the day of Ashura, they're forbidden from drinking water. They're forbidden from drinking water. The dogs of the army of Umar ibn Sa'd were able to go to the river of Euphrates and drink. Yet the grandson and the grandchildren of Rasulullah had to die thirsty. The grandchildren of Rasulullah had to shout, Al-Atash, Al-Atash. Wasn't this a great tragedy? The poet says that your tragedy made us forget our former tragedies, and they made our future tragedies seem minimal. On a night like this, Imam Hussein alayhi salam arrived to the city of Karbala on the second day of Muharram. As the caravan of Imam Hussein was passing in the desert, the horse of Imam Hussein stopped. Imam Hussein asked for another horse, but that second horse refused to move. He asked for a third horse. Finally, Imam Hussein asked his companions, أصحابي ما اسم هذه الأرض. My companions, what is the name of this land? Someone said, Yabna Rasulillah, tusamma At-Taf. It is called At-Taf. He said, does it have another name? Someone said, Al-Ghadriya. He said, does it have another name? Someone said, Nainawa. And they kept on mentioning several names until finally someone said, Sayyidi tusamma Karbala. Imam Hussein sighed, he took a breath, and he said, A'udhu bika ilahi, a'udhu bika min al-karbi wal-bala. Ashabi, inzulu. My companions, we have to settle down here. This is the land of Karbala. Ashabi, inzulu. ها هنا محط رحالنا ها هنا تذبح أطفالنا ها هنا تقتل رجالنا ها هنا تسبى نساؤنا. It is in this land that my children will be killed. It is in this land that my men will be massacred, and it's in this land that my women will be taken captives. When Imam Hussein, today or tomorrow was a day that Imam Hussein arrived to Karbala. But I would like to take you back to Medina to remember one of the daughters of Imam Hussein by the name of Fatima. When Imam Hussein alayhi salam was setting out from Medina, when the caravan was preparing, when they were preparing, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas was leaving, Ali al-Akbar was leaving, Al-Qasim, As-Sayyidah Zainab, they were all preparing to leave. Imam Hussein had a daughter by the name of Fatima. As they say, Fatima al-Kubra. Fatima was ill. Imam Hussein refused to take her with them on the journey. Fatima came, she started begging Imam Hussein, my dear father, you will all leave and you will leave me behind? My dear father, take me with you. Imam Hussein told her, my dear daughter, you are not feeling well. I'm afraid that if I bring you with me, you will die on this journey. But Fatima could not remain alone. She started begging. She came to her uncle Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. She came to her brother Ali al-Akbar. I beg you, do not leave me behind. يا ابو يا حسين وياكم اخذوني وياكم اخذوني عقبكم يا اهلي تعمن عيوني وحدي بهالوطن لا تخلوني عليلة والجسم يلضم بالسم أريد أمشي وياكم للغاضرية أحط فراشكم ونقعد سوية يا بويا منين جتني الغاضرية لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. نسألك اللهم وندعوك. Raise your hands in dua. نسألك اللهم وندعوك باسمك العلي الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم يا الله. اللهم لا تدع لنا ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا هما إلا فرجته ولا عيبا إلا سترته ولا خوفا إلا آمنته ولا رزقا إلا بسطته ولا شملا إلا جمعته ولا مرضا إلا شفيته ولا غائبا إلا حفظته ولا حاجة من حوائج الدنيا والآخرة لك فيها رضا ولنا فيها صلاح إلا قضيتها ويسرتها يا أرحم الراحمين. ولأرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات والعلماء والشهداء نقرأ سورة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.